if everybody's ready, I don't think my lecture will be that long today, but I do want to show you all the features of type. Some of them that you can see here, how type can follow a path, so it can be in curve, you can follow it around circles, squares, curved paths, like you can see where it says just don't just stand there. There's also type effects, and that kick it up. Should be editable. If it's not in the final version, it would be otherwise. How you can create type styles, where you can just select the type and click it once you've assigned a particular font, size, color, or whatever to it. Then you can make them look however you want, very quickly, nicely. Also wrap features with blocks of type, how you can bring in an image and have it follow and have it to spread apart and go around the image. And I can move this image around nicely and it still wraps around it beautifully. All kinds of features in here that work really, really nice. As I said, for example, this wrap feature, this used to be the case that if you selected and you wanted type to wrap around an image, it would have to be hand set, and once it was set, that was a done deal. And if you didn't like it, then the typesetter would have to redo it. Now if I decide, you know what, I really wanted it over there, notice how it automatically wraps around it very, very nicely. Also, if I select the type tool here and I click inside this, it should have, and I hope it has, probably doesn't. There we go. Okay, let me see something here. Command Y turns this off. And if I click here, there we go. If I select all of this where it says kick it up, sometimes when you turn off preview, when you've added some of the effects, it makes it easier to select the type. Because notice that when I have preview turned off, you don't see the bulge and that. But now if I go hit Command Y, you'll notice it's all selected now. And what we can do is we can go to where it says warp. Oh, that's not. Why isn't it selecting it? Okay, because that's what I have here. So why isn't the warp feature available? And it should be. Because in Photoshop, it's up here, and it's not here. So, okay, then let's look at type. Okay. Text wrap, I've already got that done. Why isn't the warp feature available? That's weird. Effect, and it should be warp, and it's not available here. How about if I go back to my color mode and check it? CMYK is fine. I could go back to RGB and see what happens. Effect, warp, no, that doesn't change it at all. Okay, well then I'll have to come back to it. But as you can see, when I select the text here that's wrapping along this curve, if I select edit the path, or this direct selection tool, I can click on an anchor point on the path and I can move it. Notice how the text follows the path, just like clothes are attached to a clothesline. And when you move the clothesline, the clothes move with it. Similar principle. It doesn't matter what path you create, the text will be attached to it and follow. Likewise, when we have the text here for the shoe that goes around the shoe, we have a circle, and it doesn't have to be a free form path, open path. It can be a closed path that type can follow, can work really nicely. And obviously you can take type here and you can rotate it, skew it, do whatever you want to it, and have some very nice features. Okay, so let me create a brand new document, and we're going to go over some of the tools that are available to us in here. And I'm going to go to Window, and under Workspace, I'm going to switch to the type layout. It's really designed with all of the type in mind that we have here, and I don't need colors or anything, but I am concerned about the character, the paragraphs, open type, mostly characters right now, and we can create character styles and paragraph styles that I was talking about, the stroke widths, gradients, transparencies, all sorts of stuff here. So let me start by creating some text, and I'll just click here. Let's start creating it with it being centered. And I'm just going to use the default setting. The default setting is black text, no stroke. Myriad Pro is the typeface. Regular 12 point, very small. So I'll just go ahead and I'll make Art 186. Computer graphics. Okay, which is what this class is. Now, simply to change the size of it, highlight it. If you've already typed it, come over to here. Let's actually pull this off. I don't want swatches off, I want character off. There we go. And with character separated, I'm going to go ahead and select Show Options. There's lots more options that we have down here. Okay, so it tells us here, as well as it does above, we have Myriad Pro selected, regular. This one here tells us the type. Remember when we talked last Thursday, I told you the equivalence. I told that type is measured in points and picas. It tells us that it's 12 point. It says that this one right here is the kerning. Remember the selective adjustment between letters? It's set to auto for the time being. The leading, the space between lines, is automatically set, and with 12-point type, it's set to 14.4 points. That means that there's 2.4 points between each line. That's how leading works. If you were to say, I want something set solid, it would be 12 on 12. There would be no leading in between, no extra space. The bottom of one of the descenders would almost touch the ascender on the line underneath. Not quite, but they would. To add a little space between, if I said I want a little bit of leading, you would say 12, which is the type size, and then you would take that type size and add however many points of leading you want to it. In this case, they added 2.4 points, so it's 12 on 14.8, and that gives you your leading. So actually, the actual leading is 2.4. You subtract the type size from that, and that's what gives you your leading. This is the tracking. This is the uniform adjustment of the spacing between type horizontally. And then we can actually deform the type, and we can make it more, we can change the horizontal scale and make it more expanded. We can change the height, and we can make it condensed. The baseline that I talked about last week, we can adjust. By default, the type rests on the baseline, and we can have it move above or below the baseline. And I will show you an instance when you will want to do that. You can also rotate the type from here. You can rotate the entire text, or you can rotate individual letter forms. Then if you want to use underline or underscore or strike through, you have that. And then the last thing that they have down here is you can determine what language you're using, and when you use spell check, it will do spell check in that language. So if you're typing in Spanish, if you're typing in French, if you're typing in English, it doesn't really matter, because you just have to, and you can have multiple documents open at the same time, and this enables you to use a different language in each document, and then use spell check for each particular language. It works really nicely. I will show you an example of that as well. So to take the type, I have, and change the size of it, I can do this in a variety of different ways. I can click the up button, and notice it continues to just increase it by 1 point every time I click. Or if I click on the bottom arrow, I can decrease it by 1 point. I can also click on this arrow button to the right with the flyout window, and I have some default sizes from here. And the largest one that we have there is 72 point. So let's make it a little bit smaller so it fits in here, or maybe 48. There we go. However, we can make this as large as we want. You can type in whatever point size you want. If you wanted 144, 288, as big as you want, it really doesn't matter. You can type that in, put whatever you want. Again, by default, every time I change the point size, because I have leading set to auto, it adds the appropriate leading to it if should I choose to make additional lines underneath this. Okay. Now, what are some of the things that we can do with this? When you have type set normally like this, you can change the individual character to a different font if you wish. you can always change the entire line of type to a different font if you want. You have to select what you want to change first. If I want the entire line of type or block of type to be changed, I need to select it first. And then I can come back up here instead of Myriad Pro, and you can see that we have a preview here. Maybe I want it changed to sand. All of it changes. What if I wanted just the first letter changed to a different typeface? Every single letter can be a different typeface. Every single letter can be a different size. I can assign a different leading. I can do all kinds of stuff to individual letters or entire words or blocks of type. So I can come back here, and once again I can select a different typeface. Maybe we'll select, whoops, I didn't want that. It's almost the same. So let's select, how about Trajan Pro, regular, bold. So notice that I'm combining a serif typeface with a sans serif. And let's go ahead and make this typeface even, the initial cap even bigger. So I'll go ahead, instead of 48 point, notice that I keep hitting the up arrow. And I'm making it larger, larger, larger relative to everything else. And I could do the same thing. If I wanted the initial cap of each of these to be the same, I could do so. Now, a nice way of doing this, if I select the eyedrop tool, it will select the type. It knows that I have type selected. And when I move over another letter form and I hold down the option key and I click, wait a minute, it changed it back. I'm goofing here. I can't remember which one. I'm going to go ahead and hold down the shift key. That's not working for me. So, oh, come on. How about if I select it? There's got to be a quicker way to do this. If I click on it, let's go ahead and click that. So that sucks it up. Well, that changed all of it. I didn't want to change all of it, but that works kind of nice. If I hold down the option key and I click on all of it, notice that it changed the whole line of type to the one that I selected. I just wanted to select the one. So I go ahead and I suck up that typeface. Let's go ahead and with a type tool, select just that character. Hold down the option key, click again. No, it won't do it. So I got to go back to the, okay. Why won't it let me do it? It's replacing the whole thing. I guess it will only let me replace the whole thing, not the individual letter at one time. Does everybody understand what I'm doing here? If I decide, okay, I really like this typeface better and I want the whole line of type, I can use the the eyedrop tool not only to suck up color, but when I have the type selected, it will select the typeface, and it will select the size and all the attributes that I've given it. And then when I move over it, see, when I move over this, it will click. And when I click on here, hold down the option key and I click. No, it changed that to back. So I'm goofing here. Let me go back here. Select again. Hold down the option key and click. There we go. Now it changed that back. So I can do it either way. Okay, so let's go ahead, and the other things that we can do to this. We can also change color, and we can add a stroke if we wish to this. So once again, I'll select the whole row of type, and in this instance, I'll go ahead and I'll make it red. You can only take editable text and you can fill it with a color. You cannot fill it with a gradient. Okay? There are workarounds for that, but if you wish to fill text with a color, or a gradient, there's something else that we need to do. Same would apply to a pattern if we want to do that, fill it with a pattern. Now, if I want to apply a stroke to this, I select the stroke above here, or I can select it from down in my toolbar here. And notice that by flipping it, now I have just outline text. If I flip it again, I have to select it first. And I flip it again. Now notice that it's solid red, but then when I select the whole thing again, if I click down here to select the outline, then let's decide I want it to be a black outline. See that there's a slight black outline to this now. We can also change the thickness of that outline. I can go ahead and then click and scroll up, make it a heavier outline, really bold. I can make it any color I want. I'm going to go ahead and take that off and go back to black text. Okay. Now, there's some other nifty features that we can do with this. With the text selected, I can go to Effect, and I can go, now why isn't Warp working here? Come on. Distort, none of these are working. So why is that? Huh? Well, I do have it selected. This one, there we go. Okay, maybe that was what screwed me up before. Okay, so let's go ahead now that I don't have the text highlighted, I just have the block of text highlighted, and we'll go to Effect and select Warp. Now we can select some of these. Select Preview, and now you can see the different effects. So that was what I had screwed up before. By leaving the text tool selected, it won't allow you to select that effect. So this is an example of lower arc. This is upper arc. Bulge, so it bulges. And again, we can control the settings in any number of ways. Pretty amazing what you can do with this. And when we're done with this, this is all editable, which is what makes this really cool. Because if I decide later on, you know, I didn't want Art 186 computer graphics after all, and I wanted a different typeface, and I wanted a different size, now we can go back to the text tool. We can click, highlight the text. Notice that it's highlighting not the, the text with the effect, but the regular text on it. We can switch from Myriad Pro. We'll pick something different. Maybe I'll select Papyrus here. And that adds the effect. Now let's go ahead and maybe make it a little bit smaller. And notice the whole thing changes. And I can always go back. And I can go back if we select this again. And I go back to Effect. And I supply arc again. I don't want it as a new effect, so I need to do something a little different. Let me go to Windows. Let's bring up, Appearance is already up. So where's my Appearance panel? I don't see it. I don't see it. So let's go to Window. I'll turn off Appearance. And let's bring it back up. Let's go ahead to Window. Appearance. Window. Appearance. There we go. So now what I have, when I have the type selected, and I see in the Appearance window, you'll notice here that it says Warp Bulge has been applied to this. Let me go ahead and pull this off by itself so that you don't confuse it with the other. Okay, so you'll see that the type is selected. It lets me know it's typed. You'll see here that Warp Bulge is affected, has been applied. If I double click on it, you'll notice that it brings the bulge effect back up, and now I can continue to edit this. I can make it a little bit broader, or I can even change it. I can make it to wavy text, and we can change the wave effect. We can change the horizontal so that it's more distorted in the horizontal as opposed to the vertical, and so on and so forth, until we're happy with it. So I can make changes to this as much as I want. Again, very nice. Now, what if I want to go ahead and wrap text around an object? That might be something else that we want to do. We want to wrap it around an object, around a shape. And one of the things that they have you do is they start with a circle, and that's as good a one as any. If you start it can be any closed shape or any open path, it doesn't matter. The first thing you have to do, though, is you have to make the shape. So I'm going to make a circle, and it's useful to show you what happens is that if you start with a shape that has a fill to it or even a stroke, as soon as you apply the text to it and have it wrap around that, the attributes of that shape will go away. So watch what happens. In order to apply text to a path, I'm going to go ahead and hold down on the text tool, and I'm going to use the tear off so I can see my options here. What I want to do is I have some options here, and all of these other options over here allow me to attach path to an area or to a stroke. Meaning if I want the text to fill this shape of a circle, I can do that. Or if I just want it to follow the path around the edge, I can have it do that as well. If I click that, it looks like the T is on a little ski. You know, it's skiing down the slopes. If I select that with the text tool and I have my shape selected and I click here, notice what just happened. The attributes of that shape went away, and now when I type, so now I type Art 186. Notice that it's starting to follow the path. If I don't want it on the bottom and I want it on the top, I can rotate the whole thing, but there's also more effective ways of doing this. If I select the selection tool at the top, you'll notice that there's these little bars that extend from the circle on either end. If I click this one and I move it around, notice that I can flip it by moving inside the circle, and now it's inside the circle. If I move the cursor outside, it's outside, and as I move the mouse around, notice that it slides around. And now I can put it at the top, or if I wanted it at the side, I can move it anywhere I want along this path.
How do you get it inside again?
When you, if I move, I have to select this little bar, and when I move inside, whoops, I got to make sure I have the right bar selected. Hold on here. This one here. This is the one I want. There we go. If I click that bar and I move inside the circle, it flips inside. Now, why would you want that? Here, I'll show you why. Because I want Art 186 at the top, and then I want computer graphics at the bottom. But I want them both right reading. I don't want computer graphics upside down. Does that make sense? Sort of? And what if I had another shape? Let me undo this several times. Let me see if I'm back to my full circle. And let's do the Art Center orange dot. So I have, flip this here, and I'm going to take this, and I want the stroke to be none. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this and bring it to the front. So I have two circles here. This represents my logo that I'm going to leave, and that I also want some text to follow the shape of that logo. Does everybody follow that? And I want to make sure that they're perfectly aligned to one another. Because when the one text follows a circle, I want to make sure that that other circle that it's following, a copy of it, they're exactly in the same place, the same alignment. So what I'm going to do is hit Command C for copy, and hit Command F or Command V for paste in front or paste in back. When you select the edit here, you have paste in front or paste in back, and this is the key command, Apple F or Apple B. Now, it doesn't look like I've done anything, but as soon as I click and I drag, I can see I have a duplicate here. So now I'm going to take the top one, and I'm going to wrap text around it. So I'll click here. I'm going to select the top. Again, I guess I could click at the bottom too. And I have here, and I'm going to type Art. Okay, so there's Art 186. And I want this, now notice how Art 186 rides right along the baseline and it touches the circle. What if I want it to stand apart and be a little bit, I want a little bit of separation between the text and the circle. Well, how do I do that? Do I make the circle bigger? You don't have to. What I do is I select the text, and I use this tool here, which if you recall a moment ago, I said this allows me to make this rise above the baseline, or I can make it rise or move below the baseline. So right now, I have it 12 points above the baseline. It's still, both of those circles are in a perfect alignment with one another. And now I want to go ahead and I want to put computer graphics down below. Well, how do I do that? I have one above the baseline and want another below the baseline. I could go ahead and make it a part of the same one, but if I want to make sure that the bottom one aligns perfectly. So really what I should do is take this one now and copy it and paste it in front of the last one. So now I have two separate pieces of text. So I'll copy, Command C, and I'll Command F, and now you'll notice it looks again like I haven't done anything. But watch what happens when I move this one. Now this one goes below, the other one stays above, and I push this one inside, so now it's right reading, but now I have a problem. It's inside the circle. I want it outside the circle, right? So let me first change the text. Let's go to T. Let's highlight the text, and I'll type in here computer graphics. Looks really compressed, doesn't look very good at all. But I'll go ahead and I'll highlight what I want moved out. And now what I'm going to do, instead of having it above the baseline, I'm going to click below, the bottom one, and I'm going to gradually have it move below the baseline. Just keep clicking until it looks right, because it's not going to be minus 12. So now I have one above and I have one below. They both follow the circle. They both follow the the orange circle that I've created. One's above, one's below. Works out really nice. Now, what if instead I wanted to fill a shape with text? You've seen that done from time to time. You've seen portraits. You've seen shapes of products, and there's text that flows inside it. Well, this is how we would do that. I'm going to go ahead first and select all of this, because now I have three shapes, and I'm going to group it, and I'm going to move it over to the side. Okay. Let's use a star shape. Maybe I want some text to fill a star shape. How would I do that? Well, the first thing that I do is I need to create my shape. So let's go ahead and make a star, like so. And I only want the text to go inside this. I don't want it to wrap around it. I don't want it to do anything else. So I start with my basic shape, and now I click this tool. This one allows me to take any shape that's selected and use it as an area to fill for text. Now I'll go ahead and I'll click in here. And I don't want papyrus regular. I want to pick something smaller. How about Verdana would be good. And I want, instead of 45 point, I'm going to make it 6 point. So it's a real small typeface. And I also want the leading to be maybe solid, so I'll make it 6.2. Now watch what happens when I start typing. I'm just going to type gibberish here. Oh, there we go. Notice how it's gradually filling the text inside the star. Now, if I had a big block of copy that I had created from Word that I wanted to paste in here, I could do that. Now, one of the other things that this is doing is if I click in here and I select all, one of the things that it does is it's spacing it so many pixels away from that edge, and that can be changed. What I need to do, though, is I need to, let's see, I'm going to bring up paragraph for a minute. I have character. Let's go to window. Where is it? Oh, come on. Did I close it? Is it already up? I don't want paragraph stuff. Here we go, paragraph. Something else is going on here. Let's go to object. No. Okay. Okay, never mind. I have it all selected. A better way to go, I have it all centered. That's why it was doing that. I forgot to change the text. So now maybe if I go justified, that will help it a little bit. And that doesn't help it. It still brings it quite a bit inside. So let me select all again. I would like the text to be closer to the edge of my star shape in there. So why isn't it doing that? Let's go to type. Area type options is what I want right there. And right now I have one column, one constant continuous row right now. It should also have in here span fixed. Okay, let's make the span and the fixed the same. Let's go ahead and reduce this. Okay, that is changing it. Let me reset this. And let's do this again. Notice how it's expanding outside of it now. So I thoroughly goofed it up. Probably be easier just to redo everything and to delete the whole shooting match and start over again. But you get the gist of it. Likewise, if you want text to simply fill, for example, and you notice here we have a block of text. Order your shoes today at Salmon Shoe World. You can create this in whatever program you want, in Word, Pages, doesn't matter. You can go ahead and you can select all of it. You should be able to select all of it. There we go. Copy it so that I have all the text copied. And now in Illustrator, what I want to do is I want to create a block of text. So all you have to do is click and drag. And wherever you release, that's the size of your text block. Now, instead of centered, I'm going to make it flush left. And I'm going to go back to the default settings of text. We'll just make it Myriad Pro, and we'll make it regular. And let's make it 8 point. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste inside. And you'll notice all of the text is pasted inside. So if I want, I can come back, and if I need to, I can change the size of my text block, like so. So I can make the column wider, narrower. Remember I said the other day that at some point, if you need a fairly wide area, if it's larger than 48 points, or rather 48 picas, it's too long for most people's eye to track, to go from one line to the next. So what I can do with this is that I can go to type, and I can go back again, and I can say area type options. And let's bring this back up, and what I can do is that, notice under number of columns I have 1. I can switch to 2 and look at preview. It automatically shifts it to 2 columns. I can make it 3 columns, 4 columns. I can make it however big I want it, or however many columns. Okay, on the fly. When I hope when you see some of these features, I wish you can appreciate to see back in the old days, back in the day, basically in the 70s was the last, and most of the 80s, is when all of this stuff had to be hand set. And in 1988, when Illustrator came out and some desktop publishing programs, it totally transformed the way designers designed and how they did stuff, because you could do this, you could do it all yourself. They didn't need typesetters anymore, so type houses went away. And what you would have to do is, in the past, is you would take, and a copywriter would give you a typewritten piece of text, and you would have to mark up on it, and you would have to show them examples of how you wanted it set when you were done. And then what they would do is they would hand set it, or they would use a typesetting machine to type it, and they would give you, generally on RC paper, resin-coated paper, what you had requested, and give it back to you at the end of the day. So this is if you wanted to rush, maybe 4 hours, depending on how big the job was. Oftentimes it would take a whole day to get this back, and we're doing this in minutes. And you're changing it in seconds. If I decide later on I want it 3 columns, I don't want it 3 columns, I want it 1 column. It takes, in a heartbeat, it's done. And likewise, we could take some of what we've done here. if I just want to take, I could take part of this. I'm going to have to use the other one that we already have open here. It'll be easier. So, for example, let me hide this for a minute. I'm going to use the shoe piece and have it wrap around this, just as we've done there. We can come back in here, and here's our shoe. And I'm going to select this and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to come back over to my example here and I'm going to paste it inside here. Now, normally when you paste anything in here, you create a new object, and Illustrator, it automatically creates it on top of the last thing that you created. But with this object selected now, it's almost as if you're adding, magnetism to it, and it can push away the text. With this object selected, I can go to Object, and I can select Text Wrap, and I can select Make. Okay? And we can go back here, go to Object, and we can go to Text Wrap, and we can look at Text Wrap options. We can invert it. We can also determine how many points away or how strong the magnet is to push away the text. Notice that I've got it boosted all the way up to, I had it 15 points in a minute. And now when I deselect, got to be careful here and make sure you push this in the right way. Notice how as I move it around, the text is pushing away from it. Pretty nice. And it really, what it will do is it adds, from a design point of view, this does a couple of things. The shoe adds a focal point. It draws your attention to the text. And at the same time, while you're reading the text, it adds a little bit of relief. It breaks up a big block of text, and you need that sometimes. Often, you'll notice sometimes in magazine articles that you'll see little quotes that they'll take, that they'll wrench from the article, and they'll enlarge it, and it can be as big as 1 column, 2 columns. It's done more for anything than from a design point of view. It adds visual relief to the page, because to read one big, long, continuous, 3 columns of text, the whole page of it gets to be a bit much. It's a lot, and your eye needs some relief. So what they'll do is they'll add 2, 3 different quotes in there, and maybe a photograph to break up the page a little bit so it seems like it's less. And it adds some visual relief. Well, that's exactly what this does. It does a very nice job of that. Now, what if you want to add a gradient to text, or you want to add a decorative fill of some sort? Then this is what you'd have to do. So let me take this now, and let's move this. And this is something that you may want to do a lot. So select this. I'm going to move it over like so. And let's go ahead and create a big block of text here. I'm going to make sure that I have my text window back up. And I want to use some really bold text, something that would lend itself to being filled with a gradient. So instead of Myriad Pro, Poplar might work pretty well. Stencil could work pretty well. What else do we have in here that would work? Impact works real well. I'm going to select Impact, and I'll click here. So text, with gradient. And I've just used the default size, so I'm going to select it. And if I want, I can also select the free transform tool. I don't know that this is such an advisable way to work. Hold down the Shift key, and I can enlarge it this way too. But I don't know what size it is, and notice that it tells me up here now it's 87.17 points. It's best to work in whole numbers. So now when I select the fill bucket, or the fill tool here, and I switch, and I'll go to Windows, and I want to bring up my my palette here of colors. So where do we have it? Oh shoot. I can, oh, swatches is already up. Where's swatches? I don't see swatches. I know they're here somewhere, but I don't see them. Well, here's the gradient, so I'm going to pull that over. Where's, oh, swatches is right here. I'll pull that off, and we'll see the whole shooting match here. And you'll notice we have some gradients down here, and we have some patterns. If I select the gradient, it doesn't do anything. If I select a different color, I can fill it with a different color, but not a gradient. So this is what you have to do. To be on the safe side, and this is what I do, is I make a copy of this editable text. A quick way of doing that is make sure that you use your selection tool, hold down the Option key, and just click and drag and put it off on the clipboard. And now I take this text, and what I want to do is that I want to go to the type and select Create Outlines. Now what I've done is this text is no longer editable. It's just another shape, but now what I can do is I can select the text, or select the gradient and fill it with a gradient. Notice what it does. It treats each of these as individual shapes, which is what they are, and fills each one with a gradient. Well, what if I wanted the gradient to span across the whole, all of the shapes? This is what you would do. You select all of it, use your gradient tool, and let's say, for example, I wanted, it's a radial gradient right now. Click here and drag it out to here. Now notice it starts in the middle and it spans across all of these. So now each one is, all of these are filled with a single gradient. You can do it either way. You can fill each letter form with a separate gradient, or you can fill all of the letters with an individual gradient. Likewise, with a single gradient. Likewise, I can switch and I can bring up show options here. This is a radial gradient. Let's switch this and make it linear. See what it does is it, by changing it, it takes each shape and fills it with a linear gradient. But then by having them all selected using the gradient tool and clicking from top to bottom, holding down the Shift key to constrain the movement, notice that it all fills with that single gradient now, and you can create a very nice effect that way. Really very cool. Okay? So that's how that works. And again, with individual text or blocks of text, we can rotate all of it. One of the things that they demonstrated in this exercise here, let's go ahead and bring this up. Oh, come on. Here, is that if we select this individual object here, this is editable text. Notice that it says walk, run, dance. Well, let's go ahead and select the text tool, click inside it, and you'll see that all of this is editable. I can select all. I could type it, text on a vertical. And that's just achieved by using the rotation tool. While this text is selected, or this object is selected, one of the easiest ways to do this would be to double click on the rotation tool. It gives me the angle that I want to rotate it, and I can go ahead and do that and preview it and make sure that I'm doing it right. Let's say I want it horizontal again, or I want it at a 45-degree angle. Type 45, click preview, and notice that it rotated it the wrong way. So let's put -45 in there. Now it's done at a 45-degree angle across the page, and it's still editable text. So that can work very nicely for you too. Let's cancel it, put it back to where it was, and let's undo this again. So those are some other things. We have some really nice type effects here. Later on, or I can show you now some really nice 3D effects that are available for type. Really, really nice. And all of the type is editable. Unfortunately, it takes a while to for it to render what we want it to do. So let me go ahead and take this and move it. And let's go ahead and make some more bold 3D text again. Name it 3. Well, I got to make sure that I have, okay. 3D text. And again, it's really small again, so I'll select it all. Let's make sure I have my, oh, come on, where's my text box? Let's go back to Window, Type, Character. I guess I closed that. There we go. Let's make this 72 point, so it's really nice and big. Now, one of the editable effects that we can add to this is 3D. And one of the nice things that we have in here, we bring up styles or 3D effects. Let me close this. And let's go to Window. And let me see where we can have this here. I know we have some here. I'm going to bring up, I don't want symbols, I want styles. Where are styles? Am I looking right at it? Graphic styles is already up. So that goes away. Let's bring it back up again. Graphic styles. I don't want appearance. Close that. Close that. Graphic styles. This is the one that I want. Now, I can apply, effects to these, and these are some interesting styles that can be applied to the text. That applies some interesting effects and filters in an unusual way. I mean, it does a really nice job. I'm going to go back to the default settings here. I'm going to flip it so that it's filled with black. If I look under the flyout window here, you'll notice that we could say Open Graphic Style Library. And you'll see that we have some type effects here. We also have some 3D effects. And it might be useful to bring up both. Here's the 3D effects that are popping up here in a minute. And some of these look really cool. There are some really nice things that we can do, mostly with the extruded feature. So let's say, for example, I have my text selected and I select this 3D effect. All you have to do is click on the button once. It takes a minute for it to revolve and add the 3D effect, and notice what it's doing. I can come back and I can select another one if I want to test it and see how it looks. Let's look at the red one and see what it looks like instead of that one. And we'll see something that looks a little bit different. All different kinds of 3D effects that we can add to the type. And then I'll bring up the type one as well. Pretty interesting effects. And all of this is editable. I can come back and I can select, and if I want to do an ego thing, I'll put, takes a while for it to render. Okay. Didn't spell my name right because it's going so slow. And it's doing some wonky things to the type, so maybe that isn't the appropriate one to use. So if I wish, I can go ahead and remove all of this and just go back to my default settings. Let's go back here for a minute. And let's select it all. And let's remove it. So let's go ahead and, okay, I don't want the effect. I want to come back over here to Graphic Styles. And I want to, okay. Well, okay, then I guess I need to go to Appearance. So let me go back and find my Appearance panel. There's Appearance. And notice that I have the effect applied, so let's go ahead and just throw that in the trash, or just go back to my default settings here. Oh, come on. I guess I got to go back. Instead of editable, I just need to select the object. There we go. And I'll just take that effect and throw it in the trash now. Same thing, so I'm back to, now it might be easier to get it where I want it first. Because without the effects, editing the text goes much quicker. So let's highlight it again, and this time I'm going to go to text effects. So let's open Graphic Style Library, and let's look at some type effects and see what they have here. They aren't 3D, but there are some nice ones here. Come on. Why? Oh, come on. That's why. We have it selected. There we go. There's one. There's another. Perspective. There's yet another. Looks sort of metallic. There are some nifty neon effects that you might look into. There's some wiggly kinds of effects. And you could come back in and edit all of these too, yes.
On that back, on the box you're working on, see on the lower right, it has that little pencil with an X. I keep on getting that. How do I take that off? And it won't let me change.
Do you still have text selected, or did you select the selection tool?
Even if I touch the...
And it's editable to, just click on it, and then, okay, this is a separate type library. You cannot edit these from here. Once you're done with it, you put them away. The only ones that you can edit are the ones that you have applied to your file. So I can come back in here and I can apply any of these. And if I wish to remove them or disconnect, I can break the graphic link style from the text. Okay, by doing that, that allows me to do that. Now I have my editable text. It's separate from it. Here's another 3D effect. Oh, that I already used that 3D effect. Anyway, they're pretty cool. Something else that I haven't shown you, I need to go back, I forgot. But I'm going to go back and show you here that within the text here, let's say, for example, in the body copy, let's say there is a style that I want to use, or a paragraph style. We can do either one, paragraph styles or character styles. Paragraph styles determine the leading, the indent, if you want overhang as opposed to indented paragraph, that sort of thing. They're very easy. The same with character. If I decide that there's a handful of, whoops, didn't want that. Let's undo that. With the text tool, I need to click in here and make sure that it's selected. There we go. So let's say I just want this text to be a particular color and style. There's different little components in a paragraph that I want to look different from others. I can highlight it and I can go into the text tool, or I can come up here and let's say I want this to be green or a light blue instead. And instead of Times New Roman, maybe I want it to be Verdana. And maybe I want it to be, instead of regular, I want it to be bold. Okay, so I want that type to be different and I want it to stand out as a different style. With that type selected, all I have to do now is I have to click on this button here where it says Character Styles, and it will add it. And now I call it Style 1. You can double click on this and rename this and reassign the characteristics anywhere, anytime you want. And wherever you've used this style, it will update it automatically. So you can go through an entire document, and wherever you've used these styles, it will update it and make changes to it. So I'll name this my Verdana style. And leave it as is. And now I find, okay, here's another one. I want Sammy Shoe World. I select that. And now we just select Verdana and double click on it, and it's applied that style to that type. I don't have to memorize and say, now what font did I use, what color did I use, what size did I use. It's done. Likewise, we can take a block of text. For example, if I move this out of here, we'll see a little bit easier. Let's move this out so we can see what we're doing here. If I take a paragraph, let's move this down a little bit. Okay, so maybe I want my paragraphs indented. You know, a pica, so many points, whatever. I can go ahead and I can select the paragraph. So let's use the text tool and click in here. And then what I do first is I go into paragraph and I make this appropriate changes. Notice here we have, I can inset this so many pixels or so many points. That's on the left side from that box. On the right side I can do the same. Let's go ahead and inset that 6 points. So if I select all of this, you'll notice that it's changing a little bit. And now I can also, the inset here for the first line, let's go ahead and click here. I want this to be 6 points. Okay. Let's hit return. Notice that this is inset a little bit. Let me make sure that this paragraph is selected for what I want. No, I goofed. So let me go back here. Notice how it's automatically inset. Now what I can do is if I go ahead and switch to paragraph styles, I can go ahead and add this style, so it'll automatically add this. Let's go ahead and exaggerate this and make it 12 point. See how it's moving the first line over? Well, let's go ahead and add this, and we'll call this paragraph style indent. Okay, so this is our indent. Well, all I have to do is select another paragraph here, select indent, and it did everything as the same as it did here. Click this one, select indent. Oh, come on. Oh, that was a separate paragraph. No wonder you can't see it. Let's click down here, indent. Come on, indent, indent. Why aren't you doing it? Got to make sure you have the right, the first line of the paragraph selected. Why aren't you doing it? Okay, let's select this one then. Let's come back in here, first line, normal. Why aren't you doing it? Come on, come on, come on. Well, it worked nice the first time. Let's go back and change the indent style. Okay, now it's working. Now watch what happens when I change the style. Notice the size for the basic family of characters is 12 point, and the leading is 14.4, and the kerning is 0, and the family style. Well, I can come back in here, and I can change all of these. So I can go to General, I can go to Basic Characters, and within all of this, if I want to change the whole thing to Verdana now, within this, change it, and let's look, and I click, and wherever I've used it, it should change. And did it? Let's go back to normal. It didn't. Oh, come on, Kirk. Oh, you're making a fool out of me. Okay, let me try it again. Let's go back into, oh, there we go. It's changing it now, but I don't want to bring up the dialog box. See how it changed it all? Okay, so you can create custom paragraph styles, which really will speed up your design a lot, especially when you have a lot of text to use. So that you know, especially when you're using indents or overhangs for the first line, and you want to remember what type size, what leading, all that sort of thing. If you create a paragraph style and character style for the type that you're using, everywhere you type it, to make sure that you're consistent, it's easier to make sure that that's selected first, and then it will automatically follow that the rest will be done likewise. So let me go ahead here. Let's try this. There we go. Now it's selected and it changed it. Now let's select it again. Let's go back to normal. Notice how I can change blocks of types very quickly. It's making a thorough mess of it, but it's doing what I want it to do. Okay, so there is one final thing that I need to show you how you can, actually two things. I mentioned the language, and I also talked about changing the horizontal scale as well as the vertical scale of type. We come back here, and let's go with our gradient type down here. Whoops. Now what I can do is I can select the type, and let's say, you know what, I want this height, but I really I don't have that much space. You know, it needs to be smaller in order to fit the width of my page. So how do I get it to do that? If you don't have a condensed typeface, then what we can do is we can select this, and we can come in here and we can change the horizontal proportions of it. And notice how it's getting narrower and narrower. Same height, but it feels now it fits within the confines of that space. If you're not careful, you can really distort type. Likewise, I can select this, and if I decide, you know what, I have the height that I want, so let's go back and let's change this. Instead of 78 point, let's go back to 100%. I really want to squish it down. I don't have that much height. I have the width, but I don't have the height. So now I can change this here. I can go ahead and I can reduce this, and notice how I can make it much narrower, and it looks condensed. The width remains the same, but the height of the text looks really squatty. And again, if you're not careful, you can really distort type significantly, and it won't be very readable. But you can make a whole different typeface out of something just by changing some of these features. The other thing that you can do is, as I mentioned, is that what if you want to create a document that's done in multiple languages and you want to use spell check to change the features, or to check your spelling in each of those languages? Well, let's start by creating some text. And I have Verdana bold, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. Make it 24 point, maybe even bigger yet. How about 48 point? There we go. And I'm going to type Montreal. Okay. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to go back to my original proportions here so we can see this a little bit better. And instead of blue, I want it to be black so we can see it nicely. And you'll notice, let's go back to character. I don't want character styles. Where's character? Oh, come on, Kirk. I'm losing all these things. It's easy for these things to get lost. Okay, maybe I closed it. Let's go to type, bring character back up. I guess I did close it. Okay, I'm going to pull it out here so you can see what I'm doing here. In this one, we have the English or the language is English, but let me switch this to French. And let's do it Canadian French. And this is spelled correct in English, but it's missing something if it were in French, and it can detect that. So let's highlight the text. Let's go to Edit, and let's use check spelling. Let's go ahead and start. Oh, it's going to do all of it. I'm going to ignore, 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 ignore. There we go. Notice with Montreal, it has one down here. One with an accent grave over it. In French, we need the accent. It detects that this is missing the accent. So I'll go ahead and select change, and I'm done. Now I've checked it for French. Now let's highlight this again to go in another direction. Instead of French, let's switch to English. And we have UK English and USA English. Now, what I need to do with all the rest of this stuff is to get rid of the text so that when I use spell checking, it's not going through all of this. So let's see. I'm just going to get rid of all this other stuff here. I mean, that shouldn't affect it. That shouldn't affect. I'll just leave that there. So once again, let's highlight it. Remember, I switched the language from French to English, and now let's go to Edit. Let's select spell checking again. And let's select Start. And now you'll notice it doesn't like the way Montreal is spelled. It has an accent over the E. It suggests that we use Montreal without the accent. In English, it wouldn't have an accent. So either way, depending on what language you select, And there are lots of them here. Look at all the languages that this can check in. Now, one of the problems you're going to have with many of the languages, French included, but Spanish and stuff, is that you'll have special characters. You have the upside down paragraph sign. You have your accents that go over, vowels and that sort of thing. That oftentimes you will need to switch your computer so the keyboard reflects that to make it easier to type. But you can type in any language if you need to. Okay? So if you have documents that are in multiple languages or contain phrases or the entire document is in a different language, you can spell check for that quite easily by doing that. You just select the text that you want, select what language you want to make sure that spell check uses, and it will check in that language to make sure that everything is spelled correctly. Pretty amazing. Pretty nice. Okay? So there you have it. Depending on which textbook you're using and which, if you're using CS3, this would be the exercise you would use. If you're doing CS4, they've changed it and they've added text to some sort of spiral or something like that, and they've made some minor variations. But fundamentally, the text in CS3 and CS4 are the same. They really haven't changed all that much. Okay? So there you have it. Those are all the nifty features and the wonderful controls that you have in text. You can create some amazing things. What we see today, looking at this ad here, and it is a nice looking little ad, we take for granted. That say, well, of course you can do that. But to select, pick it up, and to make it bulge like that and make that editable text, you would have had to have it hand set and actually maybe hand lettered. Actually, that would have had to be hand lettered. You would have had to hire a letterer to do that and to do it by hand and then paste it up, and then they would have been able to print it. You could not have it typeset like this. You could have this hand set and have the type follow a path, a curvy path, but again, they would have had to set it along a linear piece of text and then taken your guideline and then cut it all up into little individual pieces and then make it follow that path and then photograph it again to give to you. A lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of time. Now it can be done very simply, very nicely. And you can create some incredibly complex logos, complex designs, all editable, all non-destructive. One more thing I need to show you, and then that will be it for text today. Text can be used as a mask, and you can do some pretty nifty things with it. So, for example, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to clear everything out of this, just so I have this blank slate here. Move this down a little bit, bring this here, select all, delete. Okay, so let me import a photograph, for example. Let's go ahead and place a photo, and I'll take one from the desktop here that I have on my desktop. Let's find something that will work kind of nice. Guess I could use the sunflower. I'll use the Corvette. There we go. I'm going to use the Corvette. Can't see my minus key. There we go. So I need to shrink this down. Like so. Zoom up a little bit again. So I just brought in a regular photograph. And now I'm going to take some text and I'm going to type on top of it, and I'll name it Corvette. So maybe I should copy this first, and maybe I should paste in front, which would be kind of cool. So let's go ahead and do that. So paste in front, so I have two copies. To remember that, remember, see how I have, they are both there. And now I'll put some text on top of this. So I need to make sure I have my character panel up, and my desktop is a real mess at the moment. And I want it with a text tool. Oh, wait a minute. Let's deselect this first. Okay, now I'll go ahead and with a text tool, I'm going to click on top here. And we'll title it Corvette. Okay. Let's move it over like so. Now, I only want Corvette to be where the photo, I only want the picture to be revealed where the word Corvette is. So to do that, there's a couple of ways that we can do that. Let me until we get to layers, and we'll get to layers either Thursday or next week. I'm going to show you another way. I'm going to select the word Corvette, and it's going to be the mask. I'm going to select, hold down the Shift key and select the image underneath it. Then I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to select Clipping Mask, Make. Now, it doesn't look like anything is happening here, but as soon as I move this over like so, notice how the picture inside is only inside the text. So now what I can do is I can take the text and I can edit it if I wish, or I can use the direct selection tool. I can select the mask underneath, and notice how as I move the mask or the picture underneath, I can see part of that Corvette reflected in there. Isn't that pretty cool? Now I can come back, and if as I said, if I don't like the typeface and I want it bolder or I want something different, there's bold. Let's use bold italic. It's all editable. And select tool, I can move it up here maybe. And I kind of goofed. What did I do here? Let's make sure that selecting everything here. I didn't select everything. That's why. Got to make sure I select both of these. And select this. There we go. Now they're both selected. I'm going to put that here. Let's select this again with the direct selection tool. Type and move it up. So you see that. Okay. So that's something else you can do with text. Non-destructive, and at the same time, if you want, you can apply some effects. We can go ahead and we can select the text, and let's apply an effect to it. Maybe we can go ahead, and if you want to use the warp feature, we could, and it would have that image behind it. One of the other things that we could do is we could select stylize. Oh, I have type selected, don't I? There we go. I goofed again. We go to Effect, Stylize, and we can add a drop shadow. Preview, and it should add drop shadow to the text. Oh, that's right. Okay. Is it going to work or not? I don't think so. No, because I used it as a mask. Oh, well. I know there's a workaround. I was thinking I could apply it. In Photoshop, you can apply to the editable text, even though it's a mask. You can apply that. Now I could put an image of the text behind it and apply a drop shadow to it. There is a workaround. It seems sort of inelegant, though, way of doing it. I could copy this. So Command-C for copy, and then go ahead and go to Object, Arrange, or I'm sorry, Edit, and paste and back. No, I don't want to merge swatches. I better leave well enough alone. I'm doing things to now that I think are going to cause problems. And now I can take this and I should be able to, if I have the right one selected, I should be able to go to Effect, Stylize, and add drop shadow. Apply new effect, preview. It's not working the way I want it. So, but it's not working the way I want it. I got to think about this. Because I want to have some really custom effects applied to the editable text, but at the same time, I want to use the text as a mask so that a picture or whatever is revealed behind it. Okay? So there you have it. We talked about text and text type basics last Thursday, and now you have all the things that you can do with the text tool in here. Some really amazing things. So for those of you who are ready to print today, let me know when you're ready to print and we can print your document, your beach scene.